Hey y'all, it's Kim. So, since the death of Charlie Kirk, I've decided to get back more into the scriptures. I should have been doing this anyway because of my background and everything else. But I asked ChatGPT to give me a breakdown, like a 1,000 word overview of Genesis chapter 10 through 12 with an infographic. And so, anyway, the introduction, Genesis 10 through 12, marks a turning point in the biblical narrative. These chapters are moved from the story of all humanity, creation, the fall, and the flood, to the story of one man, Abraham, through whom God will bless the nations. Chapter 10 traces the spread of nations after the flood. Chapter 11 records humanity's rebellion at Babel and the call of Abraham. And chapter 12 launches the Abrahamic story, which dominates the rest of Genesis. So, chapter 10, the Table of Nations. Genesis 10 is often called the Table of Nations, listing the descendants of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and showing how the nations spread across the earth after the flood. Descendants of Japheth's descendants generally settled in the regions north and west of Israel, often associated with Indo-European peoples. Names like Gomer, Magog, and Javan are included, linking to nations around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. Descendants of Ham. Ham's line includes nations in Africa and the Near East. Among his descendants are Cush, Egypt, and Canaan, progenitors of significant peoples and regions. Nimrod is a mighty hunter and the founder of cities like Babel, Nineveh, and Kala, or Kala. I don't know how you say that, Kala. This hints at the rise of early Mesopotamian empires and kingdoms. The descendants of Shem. Shem's descendants are linked with the peoples of the Near East, particularly in the line that will eventually lead to Abram or Abraham. Eber, one of Shem's descendants, is considered the ancestor of the Hebrews. The name Eber is related to Hebrew. The purpose of chapter 10, this genealogy is not just a family tree. It shows how humanity is divided into nations, languages, and lands. It serves as a background for the events of chapter 11 and reminds readers that God's plan is concerned with peoples, not just Israel. Chapter 11, the Tower of Babel and the line of Shem. Chapter 11 has two major sections, the story of the Tower of Babel and the genealogy that leads from Shem to Abraham or Abram. The Tower of Babel, all humanity initially shares one language and unites to build a city and tower with its tops in the heavens. Their goal is to make a name for themselves and avoid being scattered. This represents humanity's pride and desire for autonomy, echoing the rebellion of Eden. God comes down to see the city and confuses their language so they cannot understand one another. As a result, humanity is scattered across the earth, fulfilling God's command to fill the earth. Genesis 1:28 and then 9:1. But in a way that frustrates their self-made plans. The city is called Babel, related to the Hebrew word for confused. The genealogy from Shem to Abram. The second part of the chapter traces Shem's line through Arphaxad, Peleg, I guess, and others, eventually arriving at Terah, Abram's father. This genealogy narrows the focus from all nations to one chosen family. Terah takes his family from Ur of the Chaldeans and begins to move toward Canaan, but settles in Haran. This sets the stage for Abram's call in the next chapter, showing that God is preparing a particular man and family to be the vehicle of the blessing to the world. Chapter 12, the call of Abram. Genesis 12 is a watershed moment. God calls Abram, later Abraham, and makes foundational promises that shape the rest of Scripture. The call, God commands Abram, go from your country, your kindred, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. This is a call to trust and obedience, requiring Abram to leave security and step into the unknown. The promises. God gives Abram a sevenfold promise, often called the Abrahamic covenant in seed form. Make you into a great nation, bless you, make your name great. You will be a blessing. Bless those who bless you, curse those who dishonor you, and through you, all families of the earth will be blessed. This covenant is God's plan to reverse the curse of sin and bring blessing to all nations and answer to the scattering of Babel. Abram's obedience. Abram obeys and departs at age 75, taking his wife Sarah and nephew Lot with him. He travels to Canaan, and God appears to him, promising to give the land to his descendants. Abram builds altars and worships, symbolizing his faith and commitment. Abram in Egypt. A famine drives Abram to Egypt, where he fears for his life because of Sarai's beauty. I think that's how you say her name. He tells her to stay or to say she is his sister, and Pharaoh takes her into his house. God strikes Pharaoh's house with plagues, revealing the truth, and Pharaoh rebukes Abram and sends him away. This episode highlights Abram's imperfect faith, but also God's protection of his chosen one, preserving the promises despite Abram's misstep. The themes across Genesis 10 through 12, God's sovereignty over nations. Genesis 10 shows that God is involved in the spread of nations, and Genesis 11 demonstrates his power to scatter humanity when they resist his will. Human pride and divine intervention. The Tower of Babel story shows the danger of collective pride and self-exaltation, contrasting with Abram's humble faith. Election and mission. Abram is chosen not for privilege alone, but to be the conduit of blessing to the entire world. Faith and obedience. Abram models a life of trust in God, leaving what is familiar to God into God's plan. Leaving what is familiar to step into God's plan. Hope and redemption. These chapters transition the story from human rebellion to God's redemptive plan through one man and one family. Conclusion. Genesis 10 through 12 transitions from the universal story of humanity's rebellion and scattering to God's plan to redeem humanity through Abram and his descendants. The Table of Nations, the judgment of Babel, and the call of Abram all work together to show that God is at work in judgment and in grace. Through Abram, God begins a new chapter in salvation history that will eventually culminate in the blessing of all nations. And then here is just like a little whatever infographic. So the Table of Nations, the descendants of Noah's sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem, they misspelled that, from whom the nations came from, I guess. And then I don't know what's going on here. So humanity's attempt to build a tower to the heavens, I guess, and God confuses their language. And then the call of Abram. God calls Abram to go to Canaan, promising to make him a great nation. And then, of course, eventually, if you go into Matthew, you can see the different generations and how the genealogies fit together. There's 14 from Adam to Abram, I think, and then 14 or something. Anyway, yeah. So that's just a short overview of the scriptures. Like I said, I should be doing better with that. I started listening to it at least, but sometimes it's just kind of hard sitting to read the Bible like that. But I know sometimes I do sit in the morning and read, so I guess it's no really excuse. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good day. See ya. Bye.